Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into velvet parlors and lace curtained drawing rooms, where the air smells faintly of lavender sachets and unspoken scandal. You're not just here to admire the flowers, you're about to eavesdrop on a language where every petal is a word and every bouquet is a full-blown emotional monologue. These Victorians? Oh, they didn't scream or tweet, they sent each other roses. And let me tell you, half of them were not romantic. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your city and local time. Let's see who's still awake across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The door creaks open slowly. You step inside a Victorian parlor, your boots barely making a sound against the polished floor. The curtains are drawn just enough to let in slanted rays of weak English sun. There's a fireplace, not lit, but the smell of old ashes hangs in the air. On every surface, vases, dozens, and not just decorative. These bouquets are talking. Not out loud, obviously, but if you could read the language, you'd know this room is practically screaming in blossoms. A bunch of marigolds stares at you from the mantel, quietly accusing. A cluster of camellias near the window barely contained affection. And on the desk, an innocent-looking sprig of basil, which back then basically translated to "I hate you." Yeah, basil. Take that, pesto lovers. You move closer to a side table. On it, a tidy arrangement of yellow roses, lavender, and a single sprig of baby's breath. Innocent enough, until you remember that yellow roses in Victorian florography scream jealousy. Lavender whispered distrust. And baby's breath? That was a desperate plea for purity in a world that was anything but. So yeah, Grandma's vase might have been a diss track. It's called blank, florography, the secret language of flowers. And in the 1800s, it was basically emotional Morse code. Want to tell someone you love them, but weren't allowed to say it out loud? Bouquet. Want to let your neighbor know their dinner invitation was not welcome? Send a floral no thanks wrapped in mint and ranunculus. There was a flower for everything. Desire, disdain, death, debt. The Victorians might have been buttoned up, but they were never wordless. You take a seat on a fainting couch, because of course there's a fainting couch, and flip open a little floral dictionary left on the cushion. Inside, page after page of carefully alphabetized meanings. Aconite, also known as wolfsbane, misanthropy, charming, bluebell, constancy. And who could forget heliotrope? That one meant devotion, or possibly a gentle obsession, depending on the arrangement. These books were all the rage, bestsellers even. Some had illustrations so detailed you could almost smell the pages. Young ladies clutched them like social survival guides. And believe me, they needed them. In a society where you weren't supposed to speak plainly, florography was the loophole, especially for women, who were expected to smile sweetly and say nothing of consequence. The flowers? They said everything. You wander toward the kitchen where a maid is wrapping a nosegay for delivery. She moves quickly but with purpose. She's tucking thyme, courage, ivy, fidelity. And wait, is that wormwood? Yeah, that means absence. Somebody's getting ghosted. It wasn't just a love language, it was a full-blown drama in petals. In a world without texting or Instagram subtweets, this was the slow burn version of dropping hints. You couldn't say he's a snake aloud, but you could hand him a bouquet with columbine, folly, and fennel, strength tempered by flattery, and hope he got the message. You take a detour into a hallway lined with portraits, stoic faces, all high collars and stern brows. Most of them are holding flowers. Now that you know the language, it's like reading subtitles on a historical soap opera. That man clutching violets and snowdrops? He's announcing modest affection and a hope for reconciliation. The woman in black, holding nothing but a single cypress sprig, mourning plain and sharp. And the couple pose stiffly together, each with a bouquet of completely mismatched plants. Yeah, that marriage is a floral war zone. But here's the twist. It wasn't always about honesty. Sometimes florography was strategic. You could flatter, manipulate, seduce, all without saying a word. You're starting to realize that what looked like quaint customs was actually emotional espionage. Take a moment. Sit again. There's a small bouquet in a shallow bowl. Gardenias, tulips, and just a hint of sage. Gardenias meant secret love. Tulips, declaration of passion. Sage, wisdom. Basically, I want you, but I've thought about it thoroughly. You start laughing. Because honestly, it's kind of brilliant. Imagine if you could go back in time, armed with this knowledge. Every dinner party becomes a decoding exercise. Every walk in the park is a spy mission. Every failed romance is maybe just a floral misunderstanding. Historians still argue whether Victorians really believed in these meanings, or if it was mostly a novelty, a parlor game, an upper-class diversion. But in private letters and carefully kept scrapbooks, you see the truth. This language mattered. It gave voice to things that couldn't be shouted. It gave presence to emotions that otherwise would have been suffocated under corsets and politeness. And now you know it too. You stand once more. The parlor feels different now. Not quieter, but deeper. Each bouquet you pass brims with context. A vase of amaranth, and poppies, immortality and consolation. Someone's grieving, softly. A dish of peonies and geranium, bashfulness and comfort. Maybe a secret apology. A single white rose in a wine glass, silence. You reach the door again, but you don't leave yet. You look over your shoulder, at all the voices in vases, at all the unspoken truths pressed into petals. And you wonder, if someone left a bouquet for you right now, what would it say? You step through the doorway and into a smaller room. Low ceilings, dim light, the faint scent of pressed herbs and dust lingering in the air. A writing desk stands in the corner, papers stacked high, and by the window, a delicate tea table overflowing with dried blooms. Their colors faded, but their meaning still pungent. You pause to breathe it in. It smells like old secrets, or maybe it smells like intentions. Quiet ones wrapped in lace and good manners, but sharp all the same. This is where the story of florography truly begins, not in a polite English parlor, but far away, under hotter suns and behind veils of silk. The Victorians didn't invent the language of flowers. They inherited it. Long before the first proper British bouquet raised a single judgmental eyebrow, whispers of floral symbolism drifted along the trade routes of the Ottoman Empire. In 18th century Constantinople, noble women in the Sultan's harem reportedly passed messages using blooms, carefully arranged and wrapped in cloth, like botanical carrier pigeons. This salam, as it was called, didn't just rely on the flowers themselves, but on scent, color, and even the number of blossoms. A full sentence could be spun with a single posy if you knew how to read it. Word of this exotic and romantic custom made its way west through travelogues. Europeans ate it up with a spoon, especially the British. Oh, the British. By the time Queen Victoria took the throne in 1837, England was deep in the throes of what can only be described as flower mania. This was a culture already obsessed with manners, meaning, and emotional constipation. So when someone suggested you could express deep feelings by handing someone a hydrangea instead of saying, "I think you're an overbearing manipulator," it caught on faster than lace-trimmed gossip. You sit down at the tea table and find one of the first printed floral dictionaries waiting for you. It's slim, bound in worn green cloth, entitled The Language of Flowers, 1829. Inside, an entire etude of petal-powered subtext. Acacia, yellow. Secret love. Begonia. Beware, carnation. Striped. Sorry, I can't love you, dandelion. Faithfulness in adversity, forget-me-not. Do I even need to explain this one? It's not just a list. It's an emotional toolkit, a floral Ouija board, a passive-aggressive thesaurus in bloom. You flip a page and find a note scrawled in the margin. Someone's tidy Victorian handwriting, faded with time. Never mix basil with lavender. Learned the hard way. You chuckle. Now imagine this times 10,000. These dictionaries became immensely popular, and suddenly everyone was an amateur florist, poet, undercover romantic. The middle and upper classes especially, since they had time, gardens, and the leisure to sit around pondering whether rosemary was too intense for a Wednesday visit. Ladies' magazines published floral recipes like love potions. There were etiquette guides for how to hand someone a bouquet. Left hand yells disdain, right hand equals approval. Upside down, it was prepare for social annihilation. People memorize flower meanings the way we now memorize TikTok trends and texting acronyms. And into this petal-fueled frenzy stepped one of the great Victorian influencers, Lady Mary Wortley Montagu. She wasn't Victorian by birth, but she helped plant the seeds, literally. As the wife of the British ambassador to Turkey in the early 1700s, she wrote letters home describing the Salem customs she'd observed. Her vivid descriptions painted a world where flowers spoke and people listened. Now, historians still argue whether Lady Mary exaggerated a bit, maybe romanticized what was, in reality, just another quaint tradition. But whether or not the Turkish salam was as elaborate as she claimed, her letters ignited a fire. And from that spark grew an entire British subculture. You flip through another floral guide, this one printed in 1845. The illustrations are lush, watercolor blooms with just enough detail to make you smell them in your mind. And beneath each one, a definition, sometimes poetic, sometimes devastating. Take the sweet pea, departure and thankfulness, a polite goodbye. Now the foxglove, insincerity, ouch, or the orange lily, hatred. Can you imagine? Your aunt invites you for tea and you bring orange lilies. That's not a gift, it's a felony. The nuance was staggering. Even the color of a flower changed its meaning. Red roses meant romantic love, sure. But pink, gratitude. White, purity. Yellow, jealousy. And striped roses, I can't love you. Honestly, that one's kind of savage. You begin to see the complexity here. This wasn't just floral decoration. It was emotional choreography, subtle, coded, and very, very British. But here's the best part. This code wasn't universal. Different dictionaries listed different meanings. One book might say lavender means devotion. Another says distrust. So what happens when someone sends you lavender and a marigold? You think they adore you. They think they're warning you to back off. Welcome to the 19th century version of mixed signals. Of course, this led to the great debates of Victorian florography. Authors and socialites arguing in print about whether snapdragons symbolized deception or grace under pressure. Was a daffodil regard or vanity? Was mistletoe romantic or a sign you were secretly hoping someone would trip over your morals? You sip an imaginary cup of tea and shake your head. This all sounds ridiculous now, but isn't it exactly the kind of beautiful nonsense that makes a culture? The Victorians, trapped in a world of stiff manners and emotional repression, created a universe where chrysanthemums could be heartbreak and lilacs could mean first love. It gave them a way to say what they couldn't, to remember what they'd lost, to confess what they wanted, and more importantly, it gave them style while doing it. You walk once more around the room. A vase by the window has a note attached, just one word, borage. You flip to the page, borage, courage. It's enough. You step outside into a small walled garden filled with herbs, climbing roses, and overgrown mint. The air is thick with stories. You could write a novel just standing here. You pick one flower gently, lavender, and place it behind your ear. Maybe it means devotion, maybe distrust, maybe both. Victorian or not, you've joined the conversation. And you're finally fluent. The door swings shut behind you with a soft click, and suddenly you're somewhere even more dangerous than the parlor or the garden. Lady Charlotte's boudoir. Don't worry, it's not scandalous, not in the usual sense, but this is where reputations are spun, stitched, and shredded over a vase of poorly chosen daisies. You take a breath and straighten your spine. The walls here are pink velvet. The tea is always hot, and the judgments, even hotter. Lady Charlotte doesn't look up as you enter. She's perched at her dressing table, arranging a small nosegay into a porcelain vase shaped like a swan, of course. Her gloves are immaculate, her expression unreadable. You hear the faint tick of a clock somewhere in the background. Every tick sounds like a countdown to social disaster. Take a seat, she says, not turning around. You sit. Immediately, she lifts a sprig of snapdragon. Do you know what this means? You hesitate. Confidence. She gives a very slight, very withering smile. Falsehood. This is not a trick question, dear. It's a test. You're in it now. Welcome to Flower Etiquette School, where a single misplaced marigold could cost you a season's worth of dinner invitations. And sending violets to the wrong widow might start a scandal that ends in exile, or worse, mild gossip over tea. Lady Charlotte adjusts a peony in the bouquet. Lovely in June, appalling in October. You nod sagely as if that makes perfect sense. And here's the thing. It does. In the twisted, wonderful world of Victorian social navigation, flower timing was as important as flower type. An out-of-season bloom? Sloppy. A mismatched color palette? Tacky. A bouquet with meanings that clashed? Social suicide. You reach for your imaginary notebook. She continues, lifting a stalk of foxglove. This? In insincerity? Yes. Do you know what it also means? You don't. She raises an eyebrow. Energy depends on how you tilt it. Ah, position mattered too. Hold a bouquet upright? That's a compliment. Turn it upside down? An insult. Present it in the left hand? Slight. Right hand? Respect. And heaven forbid you drop a flower. Unless, of course, that was the plan. Lady Charlotte finally turns to face you fully. You see, we don't have the luxury of saying what we mean, which is why we must mean what we send. You nod again, a little less confidently. She softens, just a bit, reaches for a book on her side table. Floral Decorum, a guide to the language of nature. The pages are crisp, clearly well read. This, she says, is not for decoration, it is for survival. You start to believe her. Imagine you're at a dinner party. The room is filled with lace, lace, lemon tarts, and lingering glances. A gentleman you've barely spoken to sends over a bouquet, honeysuckle, forget-me-not, and red tulip. Sounds romantic, right? Wrong. You check your book. Honeysuckle, devoted affection. Forget-me-not, true love. Red tulip, declaration of passion. All together? Way too forward for a first dinner. You look across the room. The gentleman raises his glass. You send back a tiny nosegay, yellow carnations and daffodil, which means no, and also, you're full of yourself. The gentleman blinks, message received. Lady Charlotte hands you a small pair of silver scissors. Trim this rosemary for me. You do so carefully. She nods in approval. That's for remembrance. You realize that everything in her room, every flower, every sprig, every dried herb, has been placed like a sentence. She's surrounded herself with a diary no one else can read. You glance at the fireplace mantle. A vase of white camellia and geranium catches your eye. According to the book, camellia, admiration, geranium, gentility. A message, maybe. You wonder if it's for someone. Then you notice a second arrangement, tucked more discreetly near the window. Myrtle, basil, and yellow rose. Myrtle, love. Basil, hatred. Yellow rose, jealousy. Oof. Apparently, Lady Charlotte has layers. She sits down beside you now and reaches for a velvet box. Inside, dried blooms, each carefully labeled in fading ink. This is her past, her archive. Every arrangement I've ever sent or received, she says, eyes glinting. You can say more in chrysanthemums than in a letter. She shows you one, a wilted iris. From a friend, she says, it meant I have a message for you. She passed a week later. You swallow gently. Another pink rose in Alstroemeria. From my sister, Grace and Devotion. She knew I needed it. Then a sprig of cypress, no tag. She doesn't explain that one. You both sit in silence for a moment. And in that silence, you realize something profound. This wasn't just about etiquette or fashion or manipulation. It was about language, the kind that filled a void when voices couldn't. Lady Charlotte stands, gathering a fresh bouquet. She's making one for someone new. You watch her add heliotrope, rosemary, and bellflower. Devotion, remembrance, gratitude. She doesn't say who it's for. Maybe it's for you, maybe not, but the message is clear. You take a flower from her hand, a single lavender sprig, and this time, you know exactly what it means. You step out of Lady Charlotte's boudoir with your pulse still ticking like a carriage clock on tea too strong. The door closes behind you with a click that feels both polite and final, like the end of a chapter that was embroidered, not written. Outside, the hallway is dimly lit and filled with the smell of old wood polish and something faintly floral. Not a perfume, a message. There's a folded note on a side table. Next to it, a small bouquet. 4 flowers. No vase, no tag, just carefully tied stems. You pick it up slowly like it might bite. It doesn't, but the arrangement speaks louder than any note could. Pansy, white rose, fern, hyacinth. You don't need a dictionary now. Pansy, thoughts. White rose, silence. Fern, sincerity. Hyacinth, please forgive me. This is a letter without ink. You carry it like a confession. Downstairs, the drawing room is quiet. The curtains have been drawn tighter against the fading afternoon light, and the only sound is the delicate clink of china in a teacup saucer someone forgot to retrieve. You take a seat near the window and look out at the garden, and you imagine it. Two people standing in that very garden. They're not speaking. They don't have to. One reaches into their coat pocket, pulls out a tiny bunch of violets, and lays them gently on the bench. Faithfulness. The other pulls a small carnation from her sleeve. Admiration. A simple exchange. A whole conversation. You shift in your chair and stare down at the bouquet in your lap. Now you're thinking about the logistics. How many of these silent conversations took place in drawing rooms like this one? How many people sent messages through florists and servants because they couldn't say the words themselves? In a world of stiff collars and tighter social rules, this was texting before texting. Actually, it was better, slower, richer, riskier. Because let's be honest, handing someone a bouquet with a perfectly arranged insult took more effort than throwing a shade emoji into a chat. Take the famed Tussie Mussy, not a dessert, a Victorian bouquet. Small, handheld, wrapped in lace or a doily, sometimes resting in a silver vase you could carry like a purse. Think of it as the original DM. You'd hand one to someone at a ball or leave it discreetly on a doorstep, and boom, emotional landmine delivered. You imagine it. A gentleman leaves a Tussie Mussy on a lady's chair at supper. 3 sprigs of lavender, a sprig of mint, 1 white daffodil. You, being very fluent now, gasp internally. Distrust, virtue, rebirth. She's been warned and invited to consider reforming. You shake your head, savage. And that's just one exchange. Now imagine a long courtship carried out entirely in bouquets. He sends jonquils, desire. She replies with white chrysanthemums, truth. He follows up with red camellia, flame of love. She responds with striped carnations. Sorry, not happening. Game, set, match. They never even locked eyes. But the story was written in petals and read with a sigh. You stand now and wander toward the small library tucked beside the parlor. The door creaks open, revealing a room drenched in dust and silence. A floral-patterned armchair sits by the fireplace, worn down at the elbows like it's been leaned on by generations of nervous letter writers. You sink into it. There's a ledger left on the side table. Inside, pressed flowers. Dozens of them. Pressed flat, labeled in looping cursive, each with a date. May 3rd, 1844. Mimosa, sensitivity. Forget-me-not, true love. June 10th, 1804, marigold. Grief, basil, hatred. October 1st, 1844. Chrysanthemum, truth. Bay leaf, strength. It reads like a diary, but it's not about the person who wrote it. It's about the person they couldn't speak to. You turn another page. More flowers, more quiet thunder. One dated simply Tuesday. A single white tulip. Forgiveness. You wonder if it worked. Did they meet? Did they reconcile? Or did the message get lost, delivered too late, or misunderstood entirely? You sit back and your mind drifts to all the people who never received the right bouquet. Imagine waiting by the door for days, expecting roses and getting ranunculus instead. In the Victorian language of flowers, ranunculus meant you are radiant with charms. But if you'd been hoping for marjoram, joy and happiness, that could be a real blow. It was like being left on ried, but in petals. Historians still argue whether these messages were taken seriously. Was everyone really fluent, or was this just a parlor trick? Some say yes, some say it was mostly a game, but diaries and letters from the time suggest otherwise. You find one tucked into the back of the ledger. I sent her pink rose and cyclamen. What more could I say without saying it? And still she replied with a nettle. Nettle. You flip to the back of your floral dictionary. Pink rose, grace. Cyclamen, goodbye. Nettle. Pain. Ouch. You close the book gently. Back in the present, you glance again at the bouquet in your hand. You notice something you missed before, a tiny hidden bloom tucked beneath the fern, a bluebell. You grin. Constancy. So even in this apology, there was a little hope. You tuck the bouquet into the crook of your arm, like a letter you plan to reread later. Then you step outside, into the garden, where all of this began. Now every flower here whispers something. The forget-me-nots along the path tug at your sleeve. The iris near the hedge nods solemnly. Even the weeds seem to be trying to get a word in. And the roses are absolutely full of themselves. You kneel to pick one, a pale pink bloom just starting to open. Admiration. You consider keeping it. Then place it on the stone bench near the fountain instead, for someone else to find. Let them decode it. Let the story continue. The garden is quiet now, wrapped in dusk like a soft shawl. The sky above glows with the last light of day, and you wander further down the gravel path, bouquet still tucked beneath your arm, like a whispered memory. Around you, the flowers begin to blur together. Ivy crawling up trellises, foxglove nodding gently in the breeze, roses in full pout. And there's something theatrical in the air. Like you've just walked onto a stage before the curtain rises. Or maybe behind curtain already rose and you're in the second act. Ahead, a wrought iron gate swings slightly open. Beyond it, you find yourself entering a drawing room. Not just a regular one, mind you. This is the Victorian nerve center of floral gossip. Welcome to the parlor where reputations bloomed or withered depending on who sat nearest the geraniums. The air is thick with perfume and the quiet tension of polite war. 5 women sit in a loose circle of ornate chairs, each nursing tea and making absolutely devastating eye contact across the rim of their cups. On the sideboard, a giant bouquet, fresh cut and offensively well arranged. Someone clearly came prepared to make a statement. You settle into the nearest empty seat and pretend to stir sugar into your invisible teacup. Eavesdropping is the only option here. Lady Beatrice, the one with a mole shaped exactly like a comma, leans forward. Of course, I couldn't possibly say anything aloud, but I did send my thoughts in a bouquet. A murmur goes around the room. Zinnia? Someone asks. Beatrice smiles tightly. Red ones. You inhale sharply. Steadfastness in friendship, which is what you say when you don't like someone but want to sound generous about it. Lady Agnes gives a delicate snort. And what did you receive in return? Beatrice dabs at her lips with a handkerchief. Cactus. Oof. That's floral for I prefer you far away and possibly full of holes. Another lady tuts softly. The nerve. But you notice something else. The bouquet on the sideboard. It's not just decorative. It's a battle map. Let's decode it. Dahlias, dignity. Gladiolus, strength of character. Yellow carnation, you disappoint me. And most pointedly, a single dead poppy. Consolation. Someone isn't just making conversation. They're dropping emotional bombs in bloom form. And these women, they know exactly what's being said. See, in the Victorian world, flower arrangements weren't just gestures. They were scripts. You could deliver praise, scorn, condolences, or outright declarations of social war, all while maintaining perfect posture. That woman who placed a bouquet of ranunculus on the piano, she didn't just like the color, she was calling someone a charming liar. The young man who left a posy of purple lilac at the school teacher's door, he wasn't being sweet, he was saying, first love, and hoping she remembered. This drawing room is a theater, and these bouquets are the monologues. You shift in your seat and find a small card tucked into a dish of candied ginger on the side table. It reads, a flower unchosen is still a statement. That's another rule of florography. What you leave out matters as much as what you include. Did you forget to add lavender? Now it looks like you don't trust them. Did you avoid white lilies? Maybe you're hoping for something less permanent than death. Every omission is noticed, cataloged, discussed. Lady Emmeline, who has been silent until now, finally speaks. I received an orchid this morning. The room gasps. Because orchids, especially in the 19th century, meant rare, refined beauty, and sometimes sexual desire. Depending on the color and context, Lady Emmeline lets the silence stretch, then sips her tea. It was speckled. You check your inner dictionary. Speckled orchids? That's floral code for, I admire you, but I am hesitant. This is a cliffhanger in a vase. You lean back and let the drama wash over you. There's something magical about this form of communication. So refined, so restrained, yet bursting with intensity just beneath the surface. In many ways, it was safer than speaking aloud. And in others, far more dangerous. Because once you learn the meanings, you can't unsee them. You walk through a hallway of portraits, and every painted bloom becomes a paragraph. You see a man carrying a single stem, and you're already reading the subtext. You pass a garden and realize it's not just beautiful, it's saying something, loudly. You glance again at your own bouquet, still fragrant, still speaking. And tucked in the middle now, you notice something new. An aster, small, pale purple, meaning, take care of yourself for me. You pause. Who added that? Did someone touch the bouquet while you weren't looking? Or has it always been there, waiting for you to understand? You slip it carefully into your coat pocket. Because messages like that, they're worth keeping close. Back in the drawing room, the ladies are dispersing. Lady Beatrice brushes past you on her way to the door and presses something into your hand. You open it slowly. A single red clover. Be mine. You look up, but she's already gone. You're not sure if she meant it. You're not sure if she even meant you. But that's the beauty of it. Ambiguity is part of the bouquet. You wander out of the room and back into the corridor. Heart light and mind reeling. And now you see flowers everywhere. On the wallpaper, in the embroidery on the curtains, in the tiny ceramic buttons on your borrowed waistcoat. It's all been speaking to you the whole time. You just didn't know the language. But now you do. And you'll never walk past a vase again without wondering, what are you really saying? You're back in the hallway now, and for the first time you notice how thick the silence is. Not oppressive, just packed, like the air itself has been absorbing all these floral monologues. And now it hums with the residue of 1,000 passive-aggressive petals. You follow a thread of scent down the staircase into what feels like another world entirely, the servants' quarter. Gone are the gilded picture frames and velvet drapes. Here, it's stone floors, low ceilings, and candlelight trembling on old brass sconces. But the language hasn't stopped. If anything, it's grown sharper, more clever, less polite. Someone left a tussy-mussy on a wooden bench near the door. You kneel beside it. It's small, humble, and wrapped in brown paper tied with kitchen twine. The flowers are simple: wild thyme, rue, nasturtium. You grin. Thyme's courage, rue, regret, nasturtium, patriotism, or, if you ask the maids, cheekiness. This isn't a love letter, it's a dare. You hear footsteps and slip the bouquet back exactly as you found it. A woman in an apron walks past you, basket in one hand, shears in the other. She doesn't even look your way. Just mutters, better rude than unread. You smile. Because down here, the flowers aren't about fragile reputations or courtship nuance. They're weapons, tools, satire. You're in the underbelly of floriography now. A side door opens to a narrow courtyard where a few off-duty staff have gathered around a barrel fire. One of them is threading a daisy chain. You ask casually if they believe in the language of flowers. Believe in it? The cook says, laughing. We run on it. She points toward a small flower bed planted against the wall, barely waist-high but absolutely full of meaning. Calendula, tansy, yarrow, clover, marigold, and dandelion. She ticks them off on her fingers. Pain, resistance, healing, luck, spite, and stubbornness. Tell me that ain't our daily rota. And now you see it, the hidden floriography, not the printed kind in gilt-edged books, but the practical, living, working-class kind. Not all roses and riddles. Sometimes it's just a note shoved into a pocket with a sprig of rue and a message. Sorry for what I said about your pie crust. Sometimes it's warning someone that Lady Beatrice is in one of those moods, signaled with a vase full of black-eyed Susans by the staff entrance. You ask if they send flowers to each other often. The gardener, a thin man with hands like bark, shrugs. More than letters, less than punches. He hands you a stem. Goldenrod. You raise an eyebrow. He smirks. Encouragement. You pocket it. You're starting a whole collection at this point. But now the conversation shifts to something unexpected. One of the maids tells you about the time they intercepted a bouquet meant for the master of the house. It had been delivered in a high-end silver holder. Very elegant, very refined. But the flowers, bluebell, cyclamen, snapdragon. The staff huddled around the floral dictionary like cryptographers. The message? Constancy. Goodbye, fall. The scandal was never spoken of. But the mistress stopped wearing her pearls after that. You shake your head slowly. This wasn't just romance, it was espionage. Clandestine communication. Whispered alliances carried on stems and wrapped in lace. One of the younger staff laughs. We call them spy bouquets. And suddenly that idea unfolds in your head like a blooming flower. Spy bouquets. Messages embedded in arrangements. Rival houses sending coded threats via birthday centerpieces. Maidens warning each other of scoundrels with carefully placed carnations in their corsages. You picture a man at a dinner party getting handed a boutonniere made of nettle, yew, and yellow rose. That's pain, sorrow, and jealousy, in case you were wondering. A polite smile, a stab to the ego, delivered in 3 inches of floristry. You walk back toward the house with this idea echoing in your thoughts. Flowers were never just beautiful. They were efficient, quick, disposable, denied in daylight. But the message, always received. Inside the house, the atmosphere is different now. You're seeing the layers. Every vase is a paragraph, every boutonniere a post-it note, every wreath a public address. You make your way to the music room. It's empty now, save for the lingering smell of perfume and piano wood. A single tussy-mussy sits atop the closed lid of the grand piano. This one's unusual. Thistle, white violet, aloe, blue salvia, sprigs of cypress. You sit down slowly. Thistle, misanthropy, white violet, innocence, aloe, grief, blue salvia, I think of you, cypress, mourning. It's a love letter and a goodbye. You close your eyes and picture the moment it was placed here. Maybe it was never meant to be found. Maybe that's the point. You tuck the aloe behind your ear. You're carrying more messages than most mailboxes now, but you're not tired. You're affluent. Outside the music room, the walls are lined with dried flower frames, not labeled, but you recognize them. Amaranth, immortality. Yellow tulip, hopeless love. Forget-me-not. Remember me forever. You think of all the people who never got to say what they meant, and how flowers said it for them, in the quietest voice. But the one that still echoes. You pass a mirror and catch your reflection. There's a daisy tucked into your collar. You didn't put it there. Someone did. You smile. Daisy means loyal love. Maybe you're not alone in this house of unspoken things. Maybe you never were. You lean against the stair railing now, bouquet half-cradled in one arm, and for the first time tonight, you feel the weight of all the meanings you've gathered, literal and otherwise. Every flower you've touched, every arrangement you've read, every glance you've decoded, it's all beginning to thread together into something bigger than a parlor game. This isn't just a secret language. It's a soft rebellion, a system within a system. And no place exemplified that more than the Victorian funeral. You descend into a quiet corridor lined with polished mahogany doors and thick velvet curtains drawn against the world. At the end, a room waits, cold, still, and scented faintly of lilies. You push the door open. Welcome to the darker chapter of floriography. Morning bouquets, wreaths of judgment, and the graveyard etiquette of petal-powered grief. The room is exactly as you expect it. Black ribbon tied around pale drapery, windows partially shrouded in crepe, and an austere coffin flanked by arrangements that look more solemn than sympathetic. Here, the flowers don't smile. They don't flirt or console. They state. One bouquet is entirely composed of white lilies. You nod, the restored innocence of the departed soul. But beside it, wormwood, a touch of bitter truth, absence, sorrow. This is no bland eulogy. This is a confrontation. You circle the room slowly, your fingers brushing petals that are already beginning to curl at the edges. You find amaranth in a vase by the far window. Immortality. A hopeful note, but even it feels somber here. Next to it, rosemary, a heavy scent. Remembrance. And behind it, tansy. You pause. Tansy means I declare war. Seriously, at a funeral. You stare at the arrangement again. This wasn't an accident. This was a message. You turn to the door as a new visitor enters, nods politely, and places a posy of bay leaves and hellebore. Victorian scandal. You resist the urge to whistle. Whoever's in that coffin clearly had a full life and a few enemies. And yet, in this room of silent messages and tightly laced grief, there's a sense of honesty. No one's pretending. They're just arranging their feelings into florals. Rage, sorrow, love, relief, it all ends up in the vase. You remember reading once that Queen Victoria herself was buried with white roses, primroses, and violets. Innocence, eternal love, and modesty. Even at the highest levels of society, floriography remained the chosen tongue for final goodbyes. Back in the hallway, you pass a sideboard where thank you cards rest in a basket. Some are floral printed. One includes a pressed daisy. You flip it open. I know she forgave you. It's unsigned, no envelope. You place it back exactly as you found it, heart a little heavier than before. Outside the morning room, the house seems to exhale, soft laughter upstairs, faint piano in the background. Life unapologetically continuing. You find yourself drawn toward the conservatory, its glass walls catching the last of the day's light. Inside, it's warm and green and bright. Everything the morning room was not, but the language persists. Floriography didn't die with funerals. It bloomed in public parks, in drawing rooms, and most scandalously, on lovers' shoulders. Victorian corsages weren't just decoration. They were statements. You walk among the ferns and orchids and spot a young woman adjusting a corsage on her friend's collar. Sprigs of lemon blossom, orange flower, and red carnation. You don't even have to look it up. Fidelity, innocence, and admiration. A chaste but potent declaration. Corsages in their heyday were worn like floral Twitter posts, positioned, styled, and layered for maximum emotional subtext. Left shoulder, right shoulder, center chest, or wrist, it all had nuance. Too high, desperation. Too low, disrespect. Wrong flower combination, misfire. You chuckle remembering one scandalous account in the Floral Gazette from 1867. A woman wore a boutonniere containing yellow rose, jealousy, basil in hatred, and ivy, fidelity. What was she trying to say? She hated being faithful, probably not untrue. You find a diary in the conservatory, tucked between gardening manuals. Inside, the owner recorded every bouquet they'd ever received and what they thought it meant. July 4th, yellow tulip, white clover. I'm happy you noticed me. July 19th, foxglove, cypress. Go away, but with style. August 2nd, red rose, rosemary, and lavender. I don't know what this means. It scares me. You sit there for a moment, flipping pages, watching the handwriting grow looser, more vulnerable. Floriography was never just about making statements. It was also about processing, arranging emotion, making space for the unspoken. In the margins of that diary, a pressed sprig of forget-me-not peeks out. It's brown now, but still intact. You close the book carefully and return it to the shelf. In the distance, a bell chimes. Dinner or a calling card? You follow the sound to the front hallway, where calling cards rest on a silver tray beneath a mirror. Each one has a tiny flower sketch in the corner. One has a daffodil, new beginnings. Another, a violet, faithfulness. But the third, a thistle. You can't help it. You burst out laughing. Who leaves a calling card that says, I barely tolerate you, and still expects tea? That's the thing about the Victorian flower code. It wasn't just pretty, it was pointed. And it wasn't reserved for love or death or pageantry. It was for everything in between. Missed invitations, quiet triumphs, jealousy, regret, spite, gratitude too awkward to say out loud. You glance down at your own bouquet, still clutched close. There's a sprig sticking out that wasn't there earlier. A small white daisy. Again, another silent whisper of loyal love. It's the second time today. You tuck it into your collar and smile. You've become part of the dialogue. Maybe you always were. The sun is nearly down now, and everything has gone that deep Victorian gray, like the world is lit by candlelight even when no candles are burning. You step back from the calling card tray, that thistle still smirking up at you from polished silver. It's both insult and invitation. You think, only a Victorian could make a plant this prickly mean, do not approach, but do remember me. You drift toward the front hall where someone's left a fresh arrangement in the umbrella stand. Of course, even there. You lean down to examine it. Mimosa, sensitivity, heliotrope, devotion, that's right, and tansy again. A warning, a gentle one this time. Maybe a reminder not to take things too lightly. Or maybe it's just whoever lives here being passively emotional on the way out the door. The Victorians did love a dramatic exit. But if you really want to decode all this, you need to get out of the house, because the Victorians didn't keep their flower games to themselves. They took them into the open air, into parks, promenades, carriage rides, and most importantly, into Hyde Park. You find yourself now drifting not through a hallway, but a hedge-lined path, the sounds of a city pulled just out of earshot. You're strolling the infamous Serpentine Promenade, arm in arm with someone you probably shouldn't be seen with, but the only thing visible to the chaperones is a respectable bouquet, which is, of course, anything but respectable. The Victorians turned public parks into petal-powered flirtation fields. Bouquets became full-length monologues disguised in baby's breath and structured around spine-perfect posture. You couldn't speak what you meant, but you could hand someone a bunch of verbena, prayer, iris, my compliments, and red rose, love, and wait to see if they fumbled it. Or worse, handed back a posy with cypress and yellow carnation. Morning disappointment. You wince at the thought. Hyde Park wasn't just for fresh air. It was for coded rendezvous, a walk by the water, a glance, a flower, subtle and devastating. You pass a statue now. It's carved from weathered stone, worn smooth by time and London fog. At its base, a ring of marble flowers, each etched in loving detail. You kneel to read them: daffodil, forget-me-not, bluebell, heather. An entire letter carved in stone. You wonder how many lovers arranged to meet here, bouquets trembling behind their backs. How many hands brushed when trading stems. How many hearts broke at the sight of the wrong flower. You wander further. A man passes you on the path, his lapel pinned with a purple pansy. You occupy my thoughts. He doesn't meet your eye, but he doesn't need to. Later, in a less busy garden path, you come across a bench tucked beneath a weeping willow. On the seat, a book left behind. You pick it up. Another floral dictionary. This one well-worn, spine-creased, several pages dog-eared. A pressed violet falls from between the pages. You hold it up to the light. Modesty. You flip to the front. In tiny script, if you found this, then I hope you understand what I was trying to say. No signature. You turn back to the path and feel it. Threads of meaning catching in the branches above you. You're surrounded by a language more fluent than anything spoken. The wind rustles a bed of ferns, sincerity, and a child runs past, trailing daisies behind her like breadcrumbs. You keep walking, deeper into the green. At a secluded corner of the garden, you find two lovers, or perhaps just two, not quite lovers. She sits on a wrought iron bench, hands resting in her lap. He kneels beside her, offering a bouquet wrapped in lace. You stop, but they don't see you. You count the flowers: red camellia, lily of the valley, zinnia, flame of love, return to happiness, lasting affection. She reaches up slowly, takes one bloom from the bunch, just one, a violet. Then she stands, walks away, leaves the rest behind. You look again. She took modesty. She left everything else. You watch the man sit back, eyes closed. Then he smiles. Not in pain, but in understanding. And suddenly you realize sometimes the message you isn't rejection. Sometimes it's not now. Sometimes I heard you. Sometimes me too. Just not in the way you wanted. Back in the heart of the park, a florist cart rattles past, piled with peonies, stocks, sunflowers, and freesias. The boy pushing it is humming, probably not a clue what any of it means, just moving the language along without knowing he's carrying messages in every wheel turn. You stop him, buy a small bundle, 3 flowers. You don't overthink it. You just choose what feels right. White violet, olive, sweet William. Innocence, peace, gallantry. You press them into the pages of your mental notebook, right next to the bouquet Lady Charlotte gave you, right next to the thistle from the calling card tray, right next to the daisy tucked into your collar. You sit down on a patch of grass, watch a bumblebee negotiate the center of a carnation like it's trying to find the right line in a love poem. You think about all the people who never said what they meant out loud, because they didn't know how, because it wasn't allowed, because the words weren't safe. So they folded their love, their rage, their apology into petals, and they passed them along, wrapped in ribbon, bound in silence, handed off like secrets. And now they've made it to you. All those silent stories, all those careful choices, a whole century's worth of people who weren't allowed to scream, so they whispered in roses. And now that you know how to listen, you can whisper back. You pluck a sprig of rosemary from a garden wall, slip it into your bouquet, and walk on. Evening has fully taken hold now, that velvety Victorian dusk stretching itself lazily across rooftops, cloaking garden beds and gravel paths in a wash of muted blue and quiet gold. You tuck the rosemary sprig more securely into your bouquet. Remembrance. It hums against your fingertips. Not loud, not sad, just certain. You walk back toward the house slowly, not because you're tired, but because everything around you is saying something now, and you don't want to miss a single syllable. The ivy crawling up the brick wall says fidelity. The moonflowers opening at the gate whisper delicate beauty. The old oak tree you passed without thinking earlier suddenly reads like a punctuation mark at the end of a sonnet. And then you see them, two neighbors in matching hats and absolutely unmatching expressions, standing in their front gardens. It's not a conversation, it's a cold war. You pause behind a trellis to observe, becoming invisible, a ghost in cravat and curiosity. These two women are speaking in the sharpest dialect of floriography known to the Victorian middle class, the passive-aggressive border garden. The first has planted a row of snapdragons, hollyhocks, and oh dear you. The second, daffodils, yellow carnations, and in an inspired twist, rhododendron. Your mind races. Snapdragons, deception. Hollyhocks, ambition. You, sorrow. Daffodils, unrequited love. Yellow carnation, disappointment. Rhododendron, danger. You wince. These aren't gardens, these are duels, planted inch by inch, season by season. Nothing gets pruned unless it's a metaphor. One woman bends slowly to water her chrysanthemums. Truth. The other, not to be outdone, snips a marigold from its stem with just a little more force than necessary. Pain and grief. The petals flutter dramatically to the ground. Neither of them blinks. You wonder what this feud is about. A misplaced brooch, a shared suitor, a scone recipe stolen in 1863 and never forgiven. Whatever the origin, it's no longer the point. This isn't about resolution. This is about endurance. The drama doesn't just live in drawing rooms and corsages. It climbs trellises and hides behind box hedges. It's mulched into the soil and blooms on time, every time, like clockwork with teeth. You ease away respectfully and head toward the back of the house, where the scent of jasmine draws you in like music. You're entering a different kind of space now, less gossip, more poetry. There's a young man sitting alone beneath a trellis, sketching furiously in a small notebook. His lapel holds nothing but a sprig of myrtle. Love in absence. You don't interrupt, but you pause long enough to catch a glimpse of his page. It's filled with lines of verse. Next to each stanza, a flower. Verse 1, lilac, first love. Verse 2, blue salvia, I think of you. Verse 3, yellow tulip, hopeless love. He's writing his heart into petals. In the Victorian era, this was not uncommon. Poetry and floriography lived hand in hand. The most romantic suitors didn't send jewelry. They sent coated bouquets with stanzas tucked between the stems. Poems on parchment, nestled in violets and folded like petals themselves. You remember one account from a diary you read earlier about a man who courted his love entirely through seasonal bouquets. Spring, daisies and tulips. Summer, poppies and ferns. Autumn, chrysanthemum and marjoram. Winter, just snowdrops. Hope in hardship. He never wrote a single letter, and yet she knew everything. They married in a garden. You pass the trellis and make your way into the greenhouse. The temperature shifts immediately, humid, green, thick with the scent of geraniums and damp earth. Lanterns hang from the rafters, their glow refracted through panes of glass smudged with time. You breathe in, and the smell hits you like memory. Rosemary, mint, basil. You freeze. This isn't a bouquet. This is a coded confession, arranged not for aesthetics, but for expression. You glance to your left, and there it is, a planting bed shaped not in straight rows, but a spiral. From the center out, each ring contains herbs and flowers ordered like a sentence. You walk it. Basil, hate, mint, virtue, sage, wisdom, time, courage, chamomile, patience. A difficult love letter, but a true one. Someone planted this not to show off, but to say something. You kneel at the edge, fingertips in the soil. It's still warm, freshly watered, still living. You realize with a quiet chill of awe that this language didn't just belong to one class, one drawing room, one poet. It belonged to everyone, because everyone has something to say they can't quite say aloud. A mother telling her child, I'm proud of you, without embarrassing them. A widow whispering, I still feel you in forget-me-nots and ivy. A gardener showing loyalty through every seed sown with careful hands. You leave the greenhouse and return to the open air. The stars are just beginning to prick the sky, sharp as pins in a velvet pincushion. You let the cool night breeze wash over your skin. Your bouquet has changed again. You didn't touch it, but someone added something. You see it nestled between the rosemary and white violet now. A sprig of red clover. Be mine. You don't look around to see who added it. You don't need to. Some messages are for keeping, not questioning. And now the house is glowing behind you. Not just with candlelight, with memory. Every flower on every table, in every vase, in every dusty hallway now says something you understand. And you know now you were never just a visitor in this world. You've always had a bouquet in your hands, even if you didn't know the name of the flowers. The house looms like a memory behind you now, lit from within, its windows flickering with the low firelight of secrets and stories. You walk away slowly down a cobbled lane lined with flickering gas lamps, the smell of night-blooming jasmine curling through the air like a whispered thought. Your bouquet is tucked carefully under one arm, but its meaning clings to you more tightly than the silk lining of your coat. You're heading toward the place where flowers became theater. Not metaphorically, literally. You turn a corner and step through the doorway of a grand Victorian playhouse. It's empty now, long abandoned. Dust veils the velvet drapes and faded gilt, but the air still vibrates with applause that happened lifetimes ago. And here, of all places, is where the language of flowers truly performed. Victorians weren't subtle with their symbolism on stage. In operas and melodramas, bouquets were not props. They were characters. When a heroine stepped onto stage with white lilies and a gardenia, the audience knew what that meant. When the villain tucked nightshade into his lapel, they shivered. You walk slowly past rows of seats, toward the stage, your boots echoing softly. Someone left a bouquet at the footlights, old, dried, tied in faded green silk. You kneel to study it: rue, basil, red rose, fern, regret, hatred, love, sincerity. It's not a stage bouquet, it's a confession. You imagine the actress who dropped it here centuries ago, mid-curtain call. Maybe the audience thought it was just part of the show, but she knew. The stage wasn't the only place florography bloomed. In the audience, floral codes ran wild. A gentleman might drop a pansy from the balcony. You're in my thoughts. A lady might carry a fan decorated with lilacs. First love. Even corsages worn to the opera could whisper, "Come back," or "Not tonight," or "Forever, but only until Tuesday." You move behind the curtain now, backstage where the costumes still hang like empty characters. One has a pocket with dried forget-me-nots sewn inside. Remembrance. A prop sword rests nearby, the hilt tied with a sprig of heather. Protection. You begin to understand. Florography wasn't just for drawing rooms and parlors. It snuck into costumes and stage notes, into bouquets tossed by admirers, and carefully selected petals crushed into handwritten scripts. It was language written into lace, stitched into stage curtains, painted onto backdrop scenery. You find a prompt book left on a side table, the pages yellowed, ink faded. On the last page, just before the final blackout, someone pressed a flower, a cyclamen. Goodbye. It feels like the end of a love letter between actor and role, between writer and audience. You close the book and step outside again, through the stage door into an alley lined with crumbling posters and creeping ivy. A sign reads, "Last performance, March 12th, 1888. You brush your fingers over a patch of moss on the brick wall. There, beneath it, something carved. Just the symbol, not a signature, not a flourish, just a flower. Someone left a message only a fluent reader would understand. You move on and find yourself on a long boulevard where flower carts once rolled by the dozens. Here, florography became commerce. You pass a shuttered florist shop, its window still painted with looping gold script, "Say it with flowers." Inside, dusty shelves, empty vases, a bouquet pressed in the display case. It's brittle now, papery, but still arranged with symmetry and care. On the tag, an apology in 5 stems. The sign below it reads, 1. Bluebell, constancy. 2. White tulip, Arfarum, forgiveness. 3. Violet, modesty. Rose, pink, grace. 5. Ivy, fidelity. You imagine someone rushing in late one evening, breathless and embarrassed, asking the florist, "Can you help me say I'm sorry?" without actually saying it. And the florist, smiling, reaches for her scissors. This was the elegance of Victorian floral apology. There was no blurting, no grandstanding, just a small bouquet delivered with trembling fingers. And if the recipient placed the bouquet in water, message accepted. If it remained wrapped and dry on the windowsill, Message declined. Savage. You hear footsteps behind you and glance back. No one's there. But you notice a petal at your feet. Bright crimson. A camellia. You glance down at your bouquet. Someone's replaced one of your white violets. You didn't feel it happen, but there it is. My destiny is in your hands. You hold it for a moment, then tuck it behind your ear. Someone is very good at this. You arrive at the edge of a small, overgrown cemetery tucked behind the oldest church in town. The gates are half open, rusted slightly. The graves are Victorian, tall, ornate, moss-covered. And at their base, flowers. Some fresh, some long gone to seed, but all arranged with meaning. You read the bouquets like pages of a diary. On one grave, amaryllis, daisy, and asphodel. Pride, loyal love, my regrets follow you to the grave. On another, fennel and yellow roses. Strength, jealousy. You blink. That one's a warning or a confession, or both. Even in death, the messages continue. You sit down on a stone bench nestled between two crumbling angels. There's a posy left there too. You don't touch it. You just read it. Snowdrop, myrtle, blue hyacinth, hope, love and absence, constancy. And you wonder, did they bring it here every year? Same flowers? Same meaning? Never a word spoken aloud? This is what florography gave them. Gave you a second voice. A sideways glance into truth. You take a flower from your own bouquet, rosemary, and place it on the bench. Not just for remembrance, but for the people who spoke best with petals, who wrote what they meant in gardens and wreaths, who carried their hopes in a vase. You stand. The air is cool now. Stars above. And the bouquet in your hand has one last sprig. Someone slipped it in when you weren't looking. It's marjoram. Joy. You walk back toward the house, lights still glowing faintly in the windows, the garden path lined with whispers. And for the first time, you know exactly what every flower is trying to say. And you know exactly how to say something back. You push open the garden gate and step softly onto the gravel path, the house rising once more before you, warm with light and memory. It greets you like an old friend, one you haven't spoken to in years, but who remembers everything you ever said, even the things you never meant to. The windows glow like half-closed eyes, watching kindly. And the flowers, they lean in now expectantly. You're not just an observer anymore. You're a participant. And tonight, the arrangement waiting for you inside isn't decorative. It's a message. You pass through the side entrance, avoiding the front where the staff still gossip in flower beds. The corridor is quiet. You can hear the grandfather clock ticking faintly in the hall, its hands moving like a heartbeat. And on the entry table, under a dome of etched glass, sits a single bouquet. No card, no name, just an intentional silence that makes the room lean forward. You lift the dome and breathe in. Scabiosa, yellow hyacinth, geranium, cyclamen. Your fingers pause at each one. Scabiosa, I have lost all. Yellow hyacinth, jealousy, geranium, comfort, cyclamen, resignation. This is someone letting go, someone laying down their sword. Maybe it's an apology, maybe it's surrender. You leave it untouched, a note in the foyer's guest book. Some truths don't need responses, they just need to be witnessed. You move toward the ballroom now, drawn by the sound of music echoing softly through the floorboards. There's no orchestra, just a phonograph in the corner, spinning something low and lilting, like a melody written entirely in wisteria in early November. The ballroom is empty of people, but full of arrangements. A grand arch of white roses and heliotrope stands over the fireplace. Beneath it, a line of dried flowers hung upside down from the ceiling beams, the old-fashioned way to preserve them. Someone's made an art piece of unspoken goodbyes. You walk between the arrangements slowly. At one corner table, a circular wreath made only of violets. Another, orange lilies and columbine. You don't need your dictionary anymore. Violets, faithfulness, orange lily, hatred, columbine, foolishness. That one feels personal. And then you notice something stranger. In the center of the room, arranged like a dance floor centerpiece, is a kind of floral clock. 12 sections, each one a small bouquet, each one marking an hour. You circle it. At 12 o'clock, snowdrops, hope. At 3, anemone, forsaken. At 6, red tulip, I'm your love. At 9, heliotrope, devotion. At the center, one perfect blue iris. Your friendship means so much to me. You kneel beside it and realize this wasn't decoration. It was a timeline, a story told in hours and flowers, a whole romance compressed into petals and geometry. You feel the urge to add something, to acknowledge what you've read. You remove a small piece from your bouquet, your remaining bluebell, and place it gently at the 5 o'clock mark. Constancy. Let whoever left this know you heard them. You move now into the library, where books line the walls like formal bouquets themselves. Some bindings are frayed, others pristine, and tucked into the crack of one shelf where 2 volumes lean in conspiratorially. You see it. A pressed bouquet behind glass, carefully mounted, annotated. You read, June 4th, 1862, my answer to you. Inside the frame, chamomile, patience, fatum, myrtle, love and absence, bay leaf, strength, narcissus, stay true to yourself, yellow rose, jealousy. You laugh softly. Even in saying yes, they managed to be a little bit petty, and still utterly honest. The person who made this didn't send it. They kept it. Not all florography was performative. Sometimes it was private, a personal archive, a diary without ink, a way of making emotions feel real enough to press, label, and return to years later. You find a leather-bound journal tucked on the lower shelf, its spine cracked, pages yellowing at the edges. Inside, lists, names, dates, flowers, reactions. You read, Chai marigolds to Aunt Edith. She did not speak to me for 3 weeks. Received daffodils from Henry. He's either hopeful or incredibly vain. Also, today, lavender from a stranger. I distrust this deeply. Even here in quiet solitude, florography was both comfort and comedy. You return the book and close the glass case gently. In the upstairs hall, portraits still gaze down at you, each with bouquets painted into their hands, lapels, hair. You recognize every flower now. That woman with the spray of red clover tucked into her ribbon, be mine. That man with a daisy pinned to his waistcoat, loyal love. The child holding a tiny bunch of snowdrops, hope. You stop before one painting, a woman in deep navy blue, one hand over her chest, the other holding a stem of cyclamen. You meet her eyes. She knew something, or gave something up, and all she left behind was that single flower and a look that doesn't let you go. You descend again to the front hall. Your bouquet is smaller now, lighter, not from loss, but from sharing. You've given away pieces of it in messages you didn't even know you were writing. A daisy here, a bluebell there, a sprig of rosemary left on a bench. And now on the table where you began your journey, someone's left something for you. A fresh nosegay, small, wrapped in a ribbon the same color as your coat. You pick it up and read it like a letter. Pink rose, grace, ivy, fidelity, carnation, white, pure love, pansy. You are always in my thoughts. Verbena, pray for me. It's not a flirtation. It's a memory. A moment being handed back to you in bloom form. And suddenly you feel very still. Because here you are, no longer a guest, no longer learning the language, but writing in it. You press the bouquet to your chest and let it speak for you. The evening deepens, velvet soft and violet stained, as you stand once more in the quiet front hall of the house. The bouquet in your hand is small but heavy with meaning. You can feel it, threaded into every stem, tucked between every bloom, each flower a sentence, each scent a sigh. Whoever left it for you didn't need a signature. They knew you'd understand. They trusted the language to do what words never could. You slip the bouquet into the crook of your arm, like a letter you mean to keep unread just a little longer. You walk slowly now, shoes silent against the floorboards, passing into a side room you hadn't noticed before. A conservatory not of plants, but paper. Walls lined in pressed flowers, cataloged with precise handwriting. Book after book sits open on tables, filled with flattened petals and notations in faded ink. Each page is a diary entry you don't need permission to read. A page near the door reads, March 9th. He brought snowdrops again. I placed them in the window instead of the vase. He understood. Didn't speak to me for 3 days. I missed him terribly. You turn the page. More snowdrops. More silences. Not sadness exactly. Just the honesty of things not said. You run your finger along the spine of a nearby journal. The title engraved in gold leaf reads, Arrangements Unspoken. You open it carefully. Inside, combinations. Some messy, some precise, each one labeled with what it was trying to say. Larkspur plus hyacinth plus rue, and I regret what I said, but I don't know how to say it aloud. Ivy plus white camellia plus daffodil equal, I believe you are good, but not for me. Peony plus mint, oh, I forgive you. You smile. You recognize that last one, you've seen it before. You pause at one entry, just a sketch of a hand offering a sprig of yarrow to another. No caption, but you remember, yarrow means healing. Sometimes no words are the point. You move on into what must have been the writing room. The fire in the grate is long gone out, but the scent of past warmth still clings to the upholstery. There's a desk by the window, and on it, a single dried bouquet tied with twine. A note beside it reads, "This was the last one I sent her." She returned it, but she replaced the mint with sage. She wanted me to understand. You don't need to check the meanings. You already know. Virtue exchanged for wisdom. You sit at the desk and glance out the window. Outside, the moon is rising, silver as forget-me-not petals, and the garden below is still wide awake. You can see it now, not just as a pretty thing, but as a living manuscript. The paths are punctuated with violet, with bay leaf, with sweet pea. The ivy climbing the walls is spelling something, slowly, in the way only time allows. Every gardener was a poet, every bloom a phrase. You stand and move toward the hall again, where someone has left a small wooden tray filled with blank cards and single stems and small glass bottles. A quiet suggestion. You sit down, and you write, not in sentences, but in choices. You pick lavender, for the part of you that still doesn't trust easily. Frisian, for the friendships you wish had lasted longer. Chamomile, because you're still learning how to be patient with yourself. You arrange them in the small lace cone provided. No ribbon, no signature. You place the nosegay on the table with the others, offerings left like breadcrumbs across a quiet forest of emotion. You walk back into the central hall. The fire is lower now, softer. The portraits on the wall seem less stern and more tired. The staircase creaks like it's remembering. And waiting for you at the bottom step, another flower. Just one. Heather. You exhale. Admiration. Protection. Solitude. The person leaving these messages knows you. Maybe not your name, but the shape of you. Your bouquet is nearly finished now. So much has been given away, so much added in return. You run a thumb along the lavender sprig still tucked in the binding. You remember the first time you saw it in Lady Charlotte's hand. You didn't know what it meant then, but now it speaks like a second voice in your chest. You walk out onto the veranda. The night has settled in for good. A breeze lifts the corner of your coat, threads through your fingers, and you realize something soft and final. You don't need to speak tonight. You've said more than enough. Through violets and thistles, through mint and sage, through bouquets left and bouquets returned. You place the last of your flowers on the railing, a single white rose. Silence, not emptiness, but peace. Someone will find it in the morning, and they'll understand. The veranda is quiet beneath your feet, wooden planks gently creaking, like they're clearing their throats before another whispered confession. You lean on the railing for a while, watching the garden blur into darkness. The moon is high now, and everything below is silver-laced. Hedges glowing like candle wax, roses folded into themselves, the walkways soft and wet with dew. But no flower here is asleep, not really. They're still saying things, just in a language made for moonlight. You look down at your empty hands. For the first time since you entered this house, you're not carrying anything. No bouquet, no posy, no half-scandalous tussy-mussy trying to say, I adore you, but also kindly perish. It's a strange feeling, free but not abandoned. You step down from the veranda and follow the gravel path into the side garden. You've been here before, earlier when the sun still laced everything in soft gold, but now it feels entirely different. The shadows stretch longer, the smells are deeper, less decorative, more essential. You crouch near a patch of night-blooming flowers. Evening primrose, moonflower, 4 o'clocks. Plants that defy expectation, blooming only when the world quiets down. Like they've learned it's safer to speak when no one is shouting. Even in the dark, you spot their meaning. Evening primrose, silent love. Moonflower, dreams of the one far away. 4 o'clocks, timidity. A whole poem murmuring between the roots. Behind you, the old sundial ticks in its own way. You circle it slowly and find something etched into the stone base. Not a time, but a sentence, almost invisible. The flower speaks when I cannot. You press your hand flat against the stone. It's still warm from the day. You stand again and follow a new path, one that winds behind the hedges and disappears into a gate you hadn't noticed before. The gate swings open with a sigh. Beyond it, a smaller garden. Wild, not abandoned, but left to grow on its own terms. Honeysuckle overtaking the trellis. Wild thyme scattered between paving stones. Foxglove elbowing its way past the roses like an uninvited guest. This place wasn't planted for show. This was a garden for secrets. And the arrangement waiting at its center? A single chair, a single book, and a pile of discarded stems as if someone had been sitting here for hours, trying to get the message just right. You pick up the book. It's another floral dictionary, but this one's been edited. Scrawled in the margins are alternative meanings. Dandelion, defiance, not just perseverance. Snapdragon, rage, not just deception. Rosemary, survival, not just remembrance. You flip the pages faster now. This isn't just someone cataloging meanings. This is someone rewriting them. You settle into the chair and realize you're sitting in the rebellion garden. Not every Victorian followed the rules. Not every flower stayed obedient. Some people rewrote the code. Some women refused to put devotion beside surrender. Some men stitched together bouquets that said, I see you, when the world insisted on silence. And here's where they practice. Here's where they wove new words from old stems. You glance at the pile beside the chair. A bunch of clover, a shard of broken lavender, a petal from an orchid, bruised but still fragrant. There's no message left behind, just the remains of one. And yet, you know exactly what they were trying to say. Even if the world refuses to hear me, I will grow anyway. You stay in that chair for a while, watching the sky deepen into ink. The stars overhead aren't constellations anymore. They're little bursts of yarrow, chamomile, violet. The night is a bouquet, the wind, its ribbon. Eventually you rise, and as you leave the garden, you take nothing. Not a flower, not a stone, not even a petal, because sometimes you don't need a keepsake. Sometimes the language is already inside you. You walk back to the main house for the final time. The windows are dark now. The candles have burned out. The curtains have been drawn. But the flowers, they remain. Quiet, alive, fluent. You step into the front hall and find a vase waiting on the side table. Not full, just one flower. A peony. You smile. Bashfulness and also healing. You tuck it gently behind your ear. Let it be your period at the end of a long sentence. You walk up the staircase, slow and soft. Each step lighter than the one before. Your coat no longer rustles with sprigs and stems. Your hands are free. You reach the top landing, and you feel it. You know the flowers have stopped speaking, not because there's nothing left to say, but because, for the first time, you understand them completely. The landing creaks beneath your feet, soft as the hush between questions. You stand there for a moment, not out of hesitation, but because you've arrived somewhere wordless. The silence feels earned now, not empty. It stretches out across the upstairs hallway like a pale linen sheet across a bed prepared for someone returning home. The peony behind your ear is still fresh. Its meaning still echoes. Healing. You follow the corridor, fingers trailing along the wallpaper's faded floral pattern. What once looked decorative now reads like scripture. Violets curling around door frames, tiny lilies stitched into the fabric of the curtains. You're fluent in it all now, and it's no longer a mystery, it's memory. You pass closed doors, each with a small arrangement left just outside. You pause at one. 3 stems, all white. White poppy, consolation. White rose, silence. White heather, good luck. Whoever lives there doesn't want to be disturbed. Or maybe they're gathering themselves before they can speak again. You move on. At the far end of the hallway, there's a small room tucked under the eaves. The door's cracked open, the light inside warm and flickering. You step through and find what looks like a workshop, but not for carpentry or crafts. This is a place for messages. The table in the center is long, worn smooth by decades of hands arranging things unsaid. Tiny scissors rest beside a spool of green silk ribbon. There are baskets of petals sorted by color and texture. Vials of dried herbs, a drawer labeled simply thorned. You open it. Inside, rose stems stripped of their blooms, thistle, dried briar. The language of defense, of caution, of don't touch me even if you care. You close the drawer and sit at the table. There's a note tucked under a small slate board. It reads, "Some messages are for others, some are for ourselves. Make something you'll understand later." So you do. You reach for blooms. You don't overthink. You build your own bouquet, not for beauty, not for politeness, not even for someone else. For you. You choose. Hellebore, relief after anxiety. On chamomile, patience. Yhauden bay leaf, strength. Bluebell, constancy. Pink carnation, gratitude. You bind them in silence. This one stays here. You place it in a shallow vase on the corner of the table. No label, no signature, just truth. The only person who needs to read it will know. You leave the room. The hallway is darker now. The only light comes from a candle burning on the windowsill halfway down the corridor. You stand beside it, look out. Below, the garden shimmers faintly with dew, its paths and beds spelling messages only you can decipher now. The world feels full again, not crowded, but densely meaningful. Like every leaf is a footnote, every breeze, a clause. And now, you reach the final door. It opens to a bedroom, not grand, but deeply lived in. Worn armchair, stacks of books, a bed with flowered embroidery on the coverlet, each stitch a secret. A small nightstand holds a single candle, guttering gently, and a bouquet in a low bowl. The moment you see it, you exhale, because you recognize this one. Not just the flowers, the feeling. Oidisha rosemary, remembrance. Violet, faithfulness. And master, take care of yourself for me. Red clover, be mine. You sit on the edge of the bed. This is where it ends, not the story, but the speaking. This is the final message. The one left for you when the day is over, and you've said everything you can say. And now there's nothing left but to rest. You lie back slowly, head on the pillow, peony still tucked behind your ear. The room is dark, but it doesn't feel empty. You realize something important. You have never been alone in this house. Not once. Every flower was a hand reaching out. Every bouquet, a letter folded into a petal. You were spoken to, softly, constantly. And now that you speak the language, you hear it everywhere. The breeze through the curtains, forget-me-not. The crickets outside the window, yarrow and lavender. The stillness in your own chest, olive leaf. Peace. You close your eyes. And in that final quiet, something brushes against your wrist. You open your hand without surprise. Someone has placed one more bloom there. You don't need to look. You already know. Myrtle. Love that remains even when unseen. You hold it lightly. Let it rest on your chest. And you sleep. Not like someone exhausted, but like someone understood. You sleep. Not as escape. Not as retreat. But as answer. The bed cradles you like a petal folding inward at dusk. And for a while, the world holds its breath. Even the air seems to slow down, resting just above your cheek, humming quietly in the throat of night. You don't dream, not of people or places, but of color, of scent, of shapes turning to messages, then to silence again. The peony slips from behind your ear. The myrtle falls gently from your hand. Neither hits the floor. They simply become part of the room. By the time your eyes flutter open again, the candle on the nightstand has burned out completely. Morning is near, but not quite. The sky outside the window is bruised lavender, soft, early, forgiving. You sit up. Something has changed. You don't feel different, but you are. You gather yourself slowly, rising from the bed as the coverlet slips back into place like the closing of a book. Your feet find the floor with the familiarity of a story you've read before. You know where you are, what you've carried, what you've given away. The hallway is hushed when you step back into it, but this time you don't pause to read. You don't need to. The bouquets on the floor have said what they needed to say. The portraits on the walls have already told their stories. You nod to them, not in curiosity, but in gratitude. You descend the stairs like you're returning from somewhere higher, somewhere real. The house smells of dried herbs and dust and old paper now. A fading script. The front door is already cracked open, a sliver of pale light stretching across the foyer like an invitation. And as you step through it, into the garden, into the cool breath of dawn, you realize there is one last message waiting. It's not in a bouquet. It's not on a card. It's in you. You carry it now. You are the arrangement. Your hands speak in peony and rosemary. Your silence reads in white heather and pansy. Your presence hums with the steadiness of myrtle and the ache of bluebell. You walk through the morning garden and everything greets you. The daisies nod. The lavender leans in. The sweet peas rise with the sun. You understand them all. You always did. You just forgot for a while. You reach the gate at the far end of the garden. It opens without a sound. There's no sign, no instructions. Just the world beyond, waiting. Uncoded, undecorated. But now, never unreadable. You step through and leave the house behind. Not abandoned, not left. Completed. Because you didn't just visit the language of flowers. You spoke it. You listened to it. You let it change you. And in doing so, you became part of it. The bouquet is not in your hand anymore. It is in your voice, in your choices, in your pauses. And when you walk forward, the path ahead begins to bloom. Quietly, steadily, like a message unfolding. Like a garden growing backwards through time. Like memory pressed flat and rising again. You don't look back. There's no need. You are every flower you understood, and every silence you dared to read. The path narrows now, not because it ends, but because the noise behind you has softened to stillness. You walk slower. Each step feels looser, like you're drifting just slightly above the earth, held aloft by something tender and unseen. The air is cool. It brushes your skin like a hand through lavender. You breathe it in deeply, and it smells not like morning or night, but something in between. A pause between thoughts, a stillness before bloom. You've carried so many flowers in your hands tonight. Some gentle, some sharp, some healing. You've read them like letters and held them like questions. You've placed them where they belonged, on benches, in doorways, on railings, in memory. You've learned that flowers were never just pretty. They were messages, confessions, warnings, promises. And now, in the hush that comes after the final bouquet, you feel their meaning settle in your chest, each goet. Not as weight, but as language. You understand more than before, not just about Victorian gardens or mourning wreaths or flirtatious corsages, but about how people spoke when words weren't allowed, about the ways we still do. So now, let your body sink into softness. Let your thoughts flutter down like petals. Let the meaning of the flowers you've carried slowly dissolve into warmth. Because even when the stems are gone, even when the blooms have faded, the message remains. And tonight it's this: you were understood. You were heard. You were gently, exquisitely held in a language older than letters. Now sleep quietly, like a bouquet placed on a doorstep just before sunrise.